Hey everybody, happy Friday, or at least it's Friday where I am when I'm recording. So whatever day it is, happy that day. Today we're talking about oral presentations or the spoken word. We've been talking a lot about how to write well, how to communicate well in person, but there is this very special type of communication, and it's called the presentation. And it's a useful life skill to have. You will be put into a position in life where you need to get up and speak in front of an audience. And for a lot of people, this is disconcerting. So let's learn how to do it a great job, because we're also coming up on your oral presentation assignment. So that's due soon. Check FOL for the due date, and let's dive in. So why bother? Why do you have to speak? Well, oral skills are just as important as written skills. You know, you'll definitely have to write an email or two, possibly a letter, a report, but you'll do even more speaking, I would say, in your life, depending on the job you have. And the way you speak says something about you. Are you a confident speaker, or are you timid? Are you shy? If you're shy and timid, that's okay. You know, I used to be very shy and timid about getting up in front of an audience. I think most people start their life that way because we're not taught to be very outgoing. Um, the way you speak will suggest to people if you're a quick thinker, if you're confident, if you're articulate, so you say what you mean, and really great speaking skills will make you a persuasive person as well. If you're a successful orator, and an orator is someone who gets up and speaks well in public, then you've done something amazing. It's not easy to become a successful orator, so it takes practice. Yes, some people are born with the gift of gab. It's true. Or maybe they learn it young in life, and some people don't. Whatever the case, you can learn this stuff, absolutely. If you're not a confident speaker now up in front of audiences, you can become that. And think about this, even if you're not confident speaking in public, I bet you've had experiences where you just couldn't shut up about something, right? Something you are interested in, something you're knowledgeable about. When that happens, the speaking flows, right? We get into the flow. It's usually when we're uncomfortable, fearful, nervous, that's when our speaking skills get locked up in our throat. So let's figure out how to get past this. Why are we speaking in public? A few main reasons. Obviously, you can inform. You might need to get up and explain to someone, an employee policy, or train employees, train your colleagues. Persuading is a big one. If you want to convince the boss to do something, your coworkers, your partner in life, your business partner, your parents, then public speaking and speaking from an audience is a helpful skill to learn. Informing. If you're in sales, absolutely, you need to be able to speak in public. Or if you're in any company where you rely on clients to bring in money, you're going to need to be able to inform, to give them information. Persuading customers, that's related to what we're just talking about. Doing sales, creating a proposal. Hey, we want to record this album with you, and we're going to do it this way. We want to do a joint venture with you in your company. We want you to become our client. That's basically public speaking. Of course, entertaining. Comedians do this all day, every day. They get up there and they're entertaining. If they're not entertaining, they're not going to be a comedian for very long. And then there's to acknowledge. When you go to your graduation and someone stands up and says your name, and they're giving a speech about all that you've accomplished, maybe it's the keynote speaker, they're acknowledging people. You might need to get up and do a toast at a wedding. You might need to, your brother or your sister might be getting married. You might need to say a few words at some point. And we want to avoid those cringe-worthy speeches that go on and that don't really say anything, that are full of inside jokes. Let's become public speakers, okay? Now, here's how you do it. And let's start with what makes a terrible presentation. You all know this. You've all seen cringe-worthy presentations. You've all seen very uncomfortable public speakers. It's a terrible speech or a talk when it's boring. When you can't hear someone, that's a big problem, because you're just, your mind has nowhere to go except inside, and you're not learning what this person's trying to teach you. If the presentation is jumbled, if it doesn't make sense, if it's confusing, if you can't read what's going on in the PowerPoint slides, some of these texts are 12-point font. Don't do that. Keep the font large, like what I have here. People who speak too quickly, very hard to follow. And of course, what happens when we're nervous, we start speaking more quickly. So make a conscious decision to slow down. Taking a breath is a great practice, not just for public speaking, but in a lot of areas of life. If you breathe into your stomach, you calm yourself down, you slow yourself down. And another way to ruin a presentation, terrible jokes, right? That's my calling card, but hey, what can you do? Don't do any of that. Remember we've talked pretty consistently in this course about audience analysis. You need to know your audience. If you're speaking to a bunch of children, it'll be a very different presentation versus you're speaking to a bunch of lawyers. Listeners are always impatient. A lot of them don't want to be there, or if they do, they're still just impatient by nature. They want to be entertained. They want to be excited, engaged. Listeners will daydream. Their mind will wander. People's attention span have continuously dropped in length over the last several years and decades. I think teachers have noticed this too in younger generations. I've noticed it in myself. I am much less of a patient listener. And I think it's because of my phone. We're always checking our texts. We're always checking our notifications, and it's breaking our minds. Hate to say it, but that's I think what's happening is our minds are not able to focus. And hey, here's a pro tip in life. If you can focus, that's a competitive advantage over a lot of your peers. If you can cultivate focus and a quiet mind and be able to sit and think, wow, that's rare these days. Listeners have also heard so many of these presentations and so many of them that are terrible that their expectations coming into yours probably lower, right? Probably very low. So how do we create a presentation? There are a few main steps. So number one, we always start with why. Another pro tip here, in life, always start with why. If you ever want to motivate yourself to do something, don't think about the how. Don't think about how I make $1 million. Think about why. Why do you want that million? What will it give you? If it's to buy a car, probably not a good why. If it's to give you freedom or something like that, or provide for a good life for your family, yeah, maybe that's a better why. Your why is extremely important in all things you do, including in creating a presentation. So start with why. Figure out, what do I want to accomplish with this presentation? And don't just say it's, because I want to get a good mark in this particular course. Figure out what you want to say. Always start with the purpose and not the, don't think about the outcomes, really. Second thing we do, back to audience analysis. Who's your audience? Is it other Fanshawe students? Is it your professor? Probably in this case it is. Is it your family? You want to know, what are they looking for? What are they interested in? What should you avoid? Collect your research after you've done that. All right, what do I want to say? What do I need to know in order to say what I want to say? You're going to have to do some research generally to do a presentation, unless you just know the subject matter off by heart, which is unusual. Even then, you might want to go research a quote or two. Quotes are great for presentations because there are people who are smarter than you that have said some really amazing things that support the point you want to make. Go do some research. Next, you want to complete an outline. What's an outline? It's basically a rough draft. It's a skeleton of what you want to say. Then you write the initial drafts. Okay. Now, we're not talking necessarily about writing a major paper here or a research essay, but in a presentation, there is a way of doing drafting. It's the rough draft, basically. We'll talk about that in a second. Once you've done that, okay, now you've practiced your presentation a little bit. You're going to need to adjust it. You're never going to get the presentation right on the first try. You want to practice out loud. Better yet, record yourself and play it back so you can hear. You hear much more when you record yourself, and then adjust it. You got to make changes. It's just like writing. You have to polish. You're not setting down these words perfectly the first time. It just never happens. And then go ahead and edit for style, grammar, mechanics. If this passage is sounding awkward, hey, maybe you need to rewrite it, even if it's grammatically perfect. So let's dive into these a little bit deeper. What's your purpose? What do you want your audience to believe or remember or do? Maybe you want to leave them with a call to action. Maybe you want them to get fired up about climate change and do something about changing their own habits, or writing a letter to a corporation or a government, something like that. What is it? What's your purpose? What do you want to happen after this? Don't just walk into this and start talking without a plan for that. And then once you have your purpose, every single piece of your presentation points in that direction. It's all moving in the direction of your purpose. But don't just follow a format. You don't want to say, okay, I'm going to, do the introduction, the problem, the analysis, the conclusion. No, you can certainly, I'll give you a template for a presentation, but I also want you to think about what works in this situation. Do you need to add a section? Do you need to, maybe this section doesn't work, you want to cut it. Use your own judgment on this one. Don't just follow a format. There really is no format for a presentation. Back to audience analysis. This is important, right? We've talked about it 3 times now. Does your audience know this stuff already? Are they very familiar with the subject matter? If so, you can skip a lot of the context. You can just dive into the more complex details. Is your audience of mixed expertise? So do many of the audience know a lot about it and many don't? If that's the case, you might need to find a good middle ground, a balance between those 2 audiences, right? It's very tough when you have a mixed audience, but you can certainly do a great presentation. And if they are a mixed audience, do you want to speak to everybody? If this is a presentation to adults and they've all come and they brought their children, do you want to speak equally to the children and the adults? Maybe, maybe not. But probably there's a more important audience within your audience, right? A sub-audience. So remember who you're speaking to or trying to speak to. So you're going to do some research, absolutely, in your presentation. And for this assignment, your research is hopefully already done. You have already completed your major paper or very close to it. And that is the basis for your presentation, right? The presentation in this course is a presentation of your major research paper. So hopefully you've done that. So you're collecting research. You want to know which elements of your topic are the most interesting. You might collect, just for sake of argument, say 100 sources, right? Or 10 sources. But you only actually need 5 of those. 5 of those are interesting and relevant. The others, okay, you've done the research, but you're not going to include it because it's not the most strong part of your argument. Choose the pieces of research that suit your purpose, right? We don't want to exclude information that would destroy our argument and make it invalid. We want to be honest about the argument, but we want to gravitate toward the ones that are supporting our argument. And again, back to audience analysis, which research will your audience be sympathetic to? As humans, we can relate much more to anecdotes, When I worked in government and politics, they always used to say, don't talk about statistics and facts. Don't say that we've invested $20 million into education. You talk about little Susie in grade 4 who now gets to go to a classroom that's not drafty anymore because we've invested in upgrading the building, upgrading the heating system, and you speak about the individual, right? That's what motivates people, is emotion. It's not logic. Logic is, it's a great tool, but it's emotion that drives all of our behavior. Not kidding. So choose the research that suits your audience best. Then once you've got all your research, okay, now we do the skeleton. We want to look at, all right, where are we going to start? Usually you start with an introduction, right? You're introducing the topic. And inside that topic, usually there's a problem. What's the problem we're talking about here? And then later you're going to talk about the solution. That's always a formula that I like to think about. Anytime you write an article for a magazine, or you write an essay, or you do a presentation, there's a problem and there's a solution. Think about that when you're doing your own presentation. So you can do an outline based on acts. In a play, there's usually 3 acts. You have the introductory part, and there's all the rising tension and the problems that develop, and then there's a resolution, right? All good books are set up that way. All plays are set up that way. All movies are set up that way. Usually a 3 or 5 act structure, right? And then within those acts, there are chapters, right? Chapter 1, you meet the main character. Chapter 2, you meet the villain. Chapter 3, you meet the love interest in a book, for example. In your presentation, you kind of have chapters as well. You're looking at things like, okay, here in this first act, this is introduction and context. But we're talking about, okay, here's term number 1, here's term number 2, here's term number 3. Those are all different chapters, or in this case, practically they're slides of your presentation in PowerPoint, right? And again, this is not like a hard and fast rule. It's just These are concepts for you to think about. Then, and in your outline, you can do a little bit of writing on, hey, what's going to go on each slide, right? And I recommend, I like to do this on paper. You can take just a one page and outline, act 1, act 2, act 3. And then inside that, okay, chapter 1, we're going to talk about the key terms. Chapter 2, we're going to talk about the problem. Chapter 3 is the research that's already been done, right? A little context. Write that out on a piece of paper or in a document. Don't do it in your head. You got to see this on somewhere written down. Okay, and then steps 5 to 7. I'm calling this the rough draft, but we're not writing an essay when we're doing a presentation, so it's not technically a draft. But this is kind of like practice, right? What is a draft when you write something? It's practice. You're putting down your very rough thoughts. The same happens when you do a presentation. So you've got your outline, you've got maybe some of your slides done. Now you need to actually run through it, practice, say it out loud, what you're going to say. Hopefully you're not reading word for word from your PowerPoint slides, but you know what you want to say, and you're using each of these bullets as kind of a guidepost for what you're actually going to deliver in your presentation. So you can technically call that a draft, right? Even though you're not writing it down necessarily, but read it out loud. Again, record yourself, play it back. It's a great way to hear yourself in a different light, or do it in front of someone. Do it in front of your family members or someone that's maybe willing to be a bit harsher with you. Are you being persuasive? Are you speaking up loud enough? Are you enunciating? And is it reasonable? Is it confusing? If it is, you got to go back. And then here we're polishing, here we're editing, here we're adding, we're taking away. And then practice again, practice it as many times as you need to feel confident. And hey, all those butterflies and the uncomfortable feelings that you get when you stand up in front of an audience, 90% of those go away when you're over prepared. When you know your material inside and out, boom, it's easy. You're speaking, right? It's like you're speaking to your friend about a movie you saw on the weekend. It's not uncomfortable. So ask yourself the question once you've run through it once, would you want to listen to this? Audience involvement. Okay. I'm not talking about that time I went up on stage with the comedians and they sat me down and did this funny stuff. No, I don't mean direct involvement, but you want to involve your audience emotionally. You want them to be invested in what you're saying. You want them to be enthusiastic. If people are leaning forward, it's a really good sign that you got them hooked, right? If they're slouching back in their chair, they don't care. They don't care. They're bored. If they got their phones out, that's a problem too. If you want to have people pay attention, you need to engage them somehow. That might be a physical audience participation, but no, more so I mean emotionally involved. And here's how you do that. Ask the question, why would my audience care? What are they going to do with the information? Is it useful information or is it complete nonsense? Is it, are you wasting their time? If so, they're going to be disengaged. They're going to be bored. They're going to do something else with their mind. So involve them. How do you do that? Get attention. Start with a promise. By the end of this talk, you will learn blah, or, you're going to, I saw a great TED Talk. It was very simple. It was, the guy says, you've been tying your shoes wrong your whole life. Most people do it like this, but actually it's better if you do it the other way around, reverse it. And for whatever reason, I guess that just, it's tighter. Who knew, right? But this guy had a very short TED Talk on that. And his promise was, I'm gonna tell you why you've been doing this wrong your whole life, right? Or start with a startling fact, something to engage people like, there are 500 million people in Africa without electricity. True story. An interesting quote, maybe, a problem, there's X percentage of people in London that are homeless, right? Or you do a personal story. People love stories. Anecdotes, which are just personal stories. Another person's story about, I like to open my magazine articles with a story about, hey, there's this weightlifter in the 70s and he couldn't lift more than 500 pounds over his head. So his trainers tricked him and then he started doing it and got up to way over 500 pounds. Interesting stories. People love that. For whatever reason, humans are hardwired to appreciate and enjoy stories, and we retain information better that way. Better than telling facts and figures and statistics. Forget that. You can start by establishing your credibility. You know, are you an expert in something? Have you done the thing that you're about to teach? Great. Identify your position. You know, I think we should end the lockdown. I think we should lock down people forever. What is your argument? Make an argument and make it strong. Do you have specific knowledge or qualifications? You know, if you're a doctor or a lawyer or somebody with specific training, you probably want to casually mention that in the beginning of your presentation. So people are like, oh, this guy must know what he's talking about. This woman must know what she's talking about. You can use like little trigger phrases, like if you remember, or as you've seen, right? There's people are either auditory, what do you call this? Auditory learners, so they learn by hearing, or they're visual learners, or they're kinesthetic. They need to touch and feel and actually do stuff with the information, right? Everyone has those traits, but we gravitate toward one or the other, right? I'm a visual learner. Right. So when people say, as you've seen, that engages my seeing brain, right? My imagination. Or some people might need to hear it. Like, as you've heard, you know, music is becoming a little bit flat these days. So use phrases like that, and it'll ground your audience in your presentation, and it will engage your imagination. If you can engage someone's imagination, so they're you know, don't think about a purple elephant. Right? Of course, now you're thinking about a purple elephant. That's engaging someone's imagination or their internal eye, right? More techniques here. If it's suitable, get direct involvement. Sure, you can bring someone up on stage, ask a question, do a show of hands, right? A demonstration, yeah, pick someone out of the audience and just do it. There's always that one person that loves to be the demonstrated person on. Ask a yes/no question, easy. Hey, if you get people to raise their hands a couple times, they're moving their bodies and they're changing their energy, and now they're engaged. Wonderful thing. A rhetorical question. That simply means a question that you're not actually looking for the answer. You're just using a question to get people to think. You're making a point, basically. Use rhetorical questions. Audience orientation. Hey, repeat. You know, we've talked about audience analysis now a few times, because when you repeat it, people hear it for the first time, although I've said it 10 times, right? Introduce the topic and preview the main points, right? We're orienting people. We're giving them a compass. We're giving them a direction that they can follow, so they're not confused about what we're doing in this presentation or getting lost. So you start by introducing your topic and give them that, you know, give them a look at your skeleton, at your outline. Preview the main points. Now, hopefully you're arranging these points logically, and typically that means chronologically, so in time, right? You're going to do this, then that, finally that thing. You're not going to jump around in your presentation or in time. Typically, you're starting from most important information to the least important, right? You want to give your best material first in a presentation. You can compare and contrast things. You know, it was like this 70 years ago, and now it's like this. In this country, it's like this. In this country, it's much better. Or any other strategy that can kind of give an audience an understanding of what you're talking about. Now, you've got the preparation done. Now you've actually got to deliver. So what we're talking about next is performance quality. How is the quality of your delivery, right? You can have the best information on your slides. You can have the most research done, but you can completely fall flat on your face because you're too quiet, or because you're shy, or you're fidgeting with your feet, right? A presentation is a performance. Whether it's, you know, you're delivering, you're putting on a show in a theater or in an arena for 70,000 people, the manner of your delivery is just as important as the content. And actors, singers, all kind of entertainers know this. They want to be energetic, right? If you're flat and boring, if I'm going to talk like this all day, then you're going to be freaking bored, right? You want to be energetic. You want to speak up. You want to be moving around a little bit, not too much to make your audience seasick. But you want to give the energy that you want back, right? You get in life what you give. Another pro tip for you. And if you're enthusiastic, that's very contagious. People will become enthusiastic if you are enthusiastic. Just think about the most amazing concerts you've been to. Nobody, you know, the singers on the stage weren't sitting in a chair, probably. Another technique, show yourself. You don't want to hide behind the lectern or the podium. You want to get your face out of your notes. You don't want to be hiding behind your pieces of paper. By the way, don't bring big pieces of paper onto the stage. If you have to have notes, bring little cue cards. Write down your main points and use that as a guide to remember what you want to say. Never just read off notes or slides like I did just in that bullet. You want to add something. The bullets on your slides are just a reminder for you, basically, and a anchor for the audience. But you want to be giving more. You want to be adding value to this presentation. If you're just going to read off your presentation notes, you might as well just send them the slide deck by email. You don't need to do a presentation. Your presentation will be much better if you're adding value. And by the way, rehearse, practice, practice, practice. If the first time you're delivering a presentation is live in the actual event, oh boy, that's when trouble happens, right? You don't want that. Keep rehearsing, keep rehearsing. By the way, there's this technique called the memory palace. And this was used by the ancient Greeks who were just, amazing masters of oratory and oral presentations. The Iliad, that famous poem by Homer that, the second part of it was about the Trojan horse and the Trojan War. That was delivered by a lot of performers from memory. This is the two books combined. It's like this thick, right? Probably 200,000 words. That was memorized and delivered. How the heck did they do that? Well, I'm betting they used the memory palace. So think about your house. You walk up the front steps, and that's a trigger for your memory, right? You think, okay, that's my introduction. I'm going to say this, this, and this. Your 3 steps up to your house is this point, and this point. Then you touch the front door, and that's your next slide. That's your next point. That is an anchor for you to remember, okay, now I want to say this. And then you get into the hallway, and you see, okay, there's the clock on the wall. That's a reminder to say this. There's my coat hanging here. That's a reminder to say the other thing. As you mentally walk through your house or any other place that you know well, you attach to every room or to every item in the room a point you want to make in your presentation, right? So the walking through your house or your palace essentially, and the presentation, they line up perfectly, right? They dovetail. And so that is a way that you can remember without having to memorize by rote, right? I hope that makes sense. If not, just email me about this. And then again, be enthusiastic. If you're not interested in your topic, ain't nobody else gonna be. When you finish your presentation, don't do what they do in the movies when they've done a scene. The director yells, "Cut!" No, we're not gonna do that. We don't wanna be abrupt when we end our presentation. We don't wanna say the end on the last slide, right? We don't want a slide with the end. It doesn't add anything to you can have definitely a conclusion slide with maybe your contact info, some discussion questions, maybe just a recap of your main points, but don't end like boom. You want to kind of wrap it up nicely, just like in a book. If you had Harry Potter and the first book ended with "and then they all died," that would be a terrible ending, right? You want to have things wrap up in a nice conclusion. Same goes for your presentations. So speaking of the conclusion, what do you want to do at the end? Well, you want to review your main points. You want to take someone back to the beginning and go over all the main things you've talked about, just to refresh your memory. And then maybe you add something at the end, a thought, a next steps, a call to action. It's your last chance to really remind people of what it is you're trying to do, whether it's persuade or inform or entertain. Give them a final focus. Tell your listeners how they can use this information, because everyone wants to know what's in it for me. What was the purpose of you doing all this talking, right? Especially if you kept them there for a long time. What can they then do with that information? And then thank them. When someone gives you their time, that's a valuable thing. It's more valuable than money. So thank your listeners for their time. And then questions. If you have a presentation without questions, it's a missed opportunity. You want to engage your audience in a discussion if you can. And if you've done your job of being enthusiastic, they'll be enthusiastic as well, and they'll be more apt to ask questions. And hey, if you're worried that people won't ask questions and you need to fill 20 minutes, plant some of your friends in the audience with questions. Absolutely doable. It happens all the time. Professionals do it. Now, A lot of you have stage fright, right? This is so common. I started in life with this as well. Most people are not naturally confident public speakers. Let's talk about Seinfeld. He does this bit where he says, according to most studies, people's number one fear is public speaking, right? And it's true, it is. The number two fear is death. People are more afraid of dying or of public speaking than of death. So that means that basically, to the average person, if you have to go to a funeral, you'd rather be in the casket than doing the eulogy, right? Which is just crazy, but that's the way it is. People are so afraid of looking embarrassed that they'd rather be dead. And why is that? It's because we only have really two primary fears in life that we're born with, right, from our evolutionary past. I think one is loud noises, and the second is being kicked out of the tribe, being abandoned, right? And we're afraid of public speaking because, hey, this is an opportunity to be seen by a lot of people. If you say something stupid or offensive or just makes you look dumb, you might be cast out of the tribe. So this goes back, tens of thousands of years in our evolutionary past. We're afraid of being kicked out of the tribe, even though we live in much different social arrangements these days. We're still in tribes, basically, but yeah. So now you understand. On with stage fright, we know what this is, right? You start getting, the fluttering in your stomach, your heart starts beating faster, your breathing gets more shallow and gets restricted in your throat. Totally normal. You might get sweaty palms, your throat might dry up, you need some water, your voice might break, which makes you feel even worse and more embarrassed. There's all kinds of symptoms. Hopefully not the last one, that's pretty rare, but there are things you can do about this. How do you overcome stage fright? As I said earlier, over-prepare. When you really know your topic and when you've really practiced your presentation, you're just on autopilot, right? Why do basketball players, why are they so good at making those shots? It's not because they just have confidence. It's because they've practiced the damn shot thousands or millions of times and their body just knows how to do it. It's almost automatic. When you're practicing your presentation over and over again, same thing is in effect. You're over preparing and those anxieties, they go away almost entirely. Another thing to think about is this. Michael Phelps, the Olympic medalist, the most gold medals of all time, the swimmer, completely incredible swimmer. They used to interview him and say, do you get nervous? Do you get afraid before a match? He goes, no, I don't feel fear. I feel excitement, right? Because fear and excitement, they're actually very similar emotions. The things that happen to your body are very similar. Your breathing gets more shallow, your heart rate increases, you maybe start to tremble a little bit. That's excitement. If you say it's excitement, if your mind says, hey, I'm excited, rather than, hey, I'm scared or I'm nervous, totally different story, right? The stories we tell ourselves, back to our pro tips, the stories we tell ourselves will create our reality. So if you tell yourself this is going to be fun, this is going to be, I'm going to be great, you probably will be. If you tell yourself you're nervous, you're going to be nervous. Yes, your throat will get dry. You're speaking, you need water, right? I got my water right here somewhere in case I need it. Have a glass of water nearby. It's not only going to rehydrate you and make your throat less dry, but it will give you a pause. You can take a moment to pause and collect yourself if things are going south. One tactic that's very effective, you walk into a room where you're about to present, right? You're 10 minutes early, you're 15 minutes early. What do? Do you stand up at the front of the room alone and you stare at your notes and you practice under your breath? Probably not a good idea. Go and talk to people in the audience. Have an informal conversation before the formal presentation. This will get this will get the motor running. This will get your gears going. This will get you speaking before you're speaking, right? And it makes you much less stressed out about the whole situation because you're already talking, right? And remember, people are here to see you. They want to know what you have to say. You're the expert in this situation. So feel like an expert. Don't admit nervousness to the audience. Don't say, hey guys, I didn't sleep well last night. I had 12 burritos for lunch. No, don't say that. Don't say I'm nervous. That's like blood in the water with sharks. If people in the audience know you're nervous, you're going to feel more nervous and they're going to be much more tough of an audience, right? Don't say I'm nervous. Just dive in and start talking. This is a good example. Slow down. Don't rush things. There's no need to blast through a presentation. The most confident public speakers, usually they say very little in the way of a word count. I remember watching our former premier in Ontario, Dalton McGuinty. He was a fantastic public speaker. He didn't start out this way, but he became powerful. And one of the most amazing speeches I heard him recite, it was very short. I don't know. It might have been only like 300 words, 400 words. But he stretched it out. And he had every member of the audience hanging on every word of his. If you slow down, you actually become more powerful. You don't need to jam a lot of information into the same amount of time, right? If the purpose of music was to get to the end quickly, then the best composers and the best conductors would be the ones that can go fastest, right? No, you want to enjoy the experience. Take your time with it. And then breathing. Wow, this is such a powerful tool in all areas of your life, not just with meditation, but you can just, hey, take a deep breath right now. See what happens. You're going to feel a lot better. And you can do that in the middle of your presentation too. Try to keep your breathing measured in general when you're presenting. Okay, here's what annoys audiences and reduces your own confidence. Bad body language. If you're sitting there and you're swinging your foot, that's all people can see, right? Wringing your hands, don't do that. Oh, it's annoying. Playing with your cue cards or your notes, jittery hands, no, very distracting for the audience. Shifting your weight from one foot to the other, pivoting on the heel, pulling your hair, twisting your waist, being hunched over. Okay, let's do it. No, that's very distracting, right? You can hear that. Ooh, it's awful. Or your hands in your pockets. Hands in pockets signal that you're nervous, signal that you're kind of dopey, kind of uncomfortable, right? Good body language, on the other hand, is fantastic for engaging your audience and feeling good about yourself too. Good posture means you sit up straight, your shoulders are back. What else? Power poses. Have you heard of these? If you are standing up with your hands on the table, you can practice that before you go into presentation. Or putting your hands behind your head, your feet up on the desk. Those are all power poses that just make you feel more confident. Harvard did studies on this, and you can just do 20 minutes of these power poses, and you'll enter a presentation feeling confident. Small hand gestures are fine. Nothing like wild gesticulation, but if you want to make a point, sure, absolutely, you can use your hands. Feet should generally be planted firmly on the floor, yet naturally. No hands in the pockets. Yeah. And then what do you do to prepare? No caffeine or alcohol for at least a few hours before you speak. I made the mistake of going to my old university to speak, and had a beer with lunch, and I got a little groggy and I got a little tired, and it wasn't the best speech that I ever gave. So let's avoid that stuff. Caffeine will make you jittery. Just moderation. Eat light. Heavy meal will make you tired. Not eating enough will also ruin your focus and concentration. Eat maybe something light before you speak. All of this is, the little things create the big results, right? We're talking about little tweaks here that maybe don't make so much sense when you look at them individually. You add all this stuff together. That's how we get great results. Practice deep breathing exercises before you speak. Just breathe in and out. Count to 10 while you do it. That's enough. Avoid filler words. Same as when we write. You don't want to include any ahs, you knows, okay. Well, I went to Toastmasters, and this is a global organization. They have small groups all over the place where you get together and you practice public speaking. It's actually a fantastic way to improve this skill if you ever feel so inclined. And the one thing about this is whenever you speak, there's someone whose job it is only to pick up your filler words. Like, I mean, it's amazing how much you say these things and you don't even realize. Isn't it? It's fantastic. When you actually sit and think about it, you say and like and all the time in your speech. It's easier to cut in your writing because you're seeing it. But when you're speaking, it's just an automatic habit. It comes from nervousness when you don't know what to say, when you're awkward with silences, you fill it with an gives you a break to think about it, right? But it hurts your presentation and your delivery. You can use pauses. Take a second. Your audience isn't expecting you to be spouting words the whole time when you're up there. Pause. And like I said, you can record yourself, audio or video or both, and then view the playback again. Hopefully you do this when you submit your presentation to me. Don't hit record you can hit record the first time, and hey, maybe you'll get it perfect on the first try. But I'm betting you'll see something when you watch it again and you'll want to redo it. Please redo it if it's not perfect. And then ask for help from others. Hey, you want to get your mom to watch you recite this presentation? Great, she can give you some pointers. Maybe your mom's going to be a little bit too kind to you. Maybe you pick your sibling who's going to be harsher with you. And then Toastmasters. And the other thing, remember that we're all human, okay? We're going to make mistakes. You're going to say something stupid. You're going to beat yourself up after, but try not to, because it's not helpful. We're all human. We all make mistakes. Even the most accomplished speakers will say something that they're not proud of at some point. Just slow down. If you make a mistake, keep going. What I love about powerful speakers is that they stumble on their words. They don't even go back and correct themselves, because they know their audience is going to figure out what they were saying. You know, if you say, I don't know, you're trying to say obstacle and you say obstinal, people know what you're saying. You don't need to go back to, I mean obstacle. No, forget it. That just takes people out of the magic moment there. Now, if you're presenting in groups, which normally we would be doing this in groups if we're in a classroom setting, and regardless, you're going to be in a group presenting someday, probably, even if it's at a wedding, right? Maybe you and the bridesmaid or you and the groomsman need to do a speech at a wedding. Don't say things like "next slide, please," or sorry, say things like "next slide, please," and not "you go" or "it's your turn." Avoid getting in front of someone when they're speaking. Don't be in the foreground when you should be in the background. And when you are in the background, don't be a jerk, right? Don't be playing with your phone. Don't be looking silly. Look like you're interested in what this other person's saying, your partner. Take turns speaking. Generally, it's better if you alternate back and forth between group members. You don't want to have, hey, one person's going to speak for the first half and then the next person speaks for the second half. It's better if you integrate it, right? People like the variety, like the change. And again, when you're not speaking, be aware of your own body language. Don't be tapping your foot. Don't be yawning, right? Very practical things here. Bring a backup of your presentation. Bring your damn USB key, or put it on Google Drive or Dropbox, and make sure you have a backup, right? Or send it to yourself by email. Whatever you have to do, there's nothing worse than a technical accident where you lose your presentation. Fanshawe Online has a locker for you. Use your own locker, or just use, Dropbox. PowerPoint. Okay. When we talk about presentations, we're not talking necessarily about PowerPoint. However, most people in the world today, they're doing presentations, they're using PowerPoint, right? Including your professor and probably all your professors, because it's a useful crutch. If I was a more powerful orator, I could just speak and you would be enthralled and I wouldn't need PowerPoint. I'd just remember everything and it would be easy for me, but I'm not. So you get PowerPoint. There's nothing wrong with using PowerPoint. There's something wrong when you use it improperly, okay? So let's talk about that. Use appropriate visual supports, which means a picture, an image, bullets, fine. Make any wording brief and visible, like I have here. I'm not jamming it full of text. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 words in this bullet, and the font is massive, right? Use colors carefully. You don't want to be dazzling people too much. You don't want to break your theme. Choose a theme and stick to it. Yeah, text boxes make everything look good. See, I have here a text box around this. Okay, and the heading just makes it a little more polished, and people don't have to fight to see it on the background there, right? Mr. Eminem. This is bad. All of this is terrible. Right here we have the black text on the dark background. You can't see that. Even if you do a drop shadow or whatever this is called, it's not good. It's not good, right? Red, ooh, bright. No, all of this is terrible. You can't see it. This font's too small as well. Pictures, make sure they're visible, right? These are terrible. You can't see what's going on here. Is that Tom Cruise or is that Macaulay Culkin? We don't know. Pictures should be clear, bold, and tastefully arranged. Don't put a ton of pictures on the slide. Don't put little tiny ones too. Don't steal a 5K Google Preview image and think that's good enough. Don't waste your bullets. 6, right? 6 in a list, no more. Don't do 100 on a page. It's too much. This, again, we're back to the wall of text. My favorite pet peeve. Don't do this. It's just, no one's gonna, okay. There will be people in the audience that want to read every line, and that's taking them away from what you're actually saying out loud. And then there are people that are like, F this, I'm not reading all this, and they're just gonna tune out and they're gonna think you're an idiot, right? Don't do that. Wow, are you having a seizure yet? I am. Don't do psychedelic graphics. It's very, very hard to read. We're gonna skip out of this right away. Go big or go home. We wanna have massive font if we can, right? This is 18-point font, and it's a little bit hard to read, at least from my eyes. I'm not wearing my glasses either. 20, okay, no. 20, 24, no. 28, I guess we're getting better, I suppose. 32-point, yeah, not bad. Not bad, not bad. For the headings, 44-point looks good. 32-point font for the bullets, right? This is easily readable. It's a nice font. There you go. 36 is good too. Be font savvy. These are terrible. Don't use these. They're too hard to read on a PowerPoint presentation. Just be simple. Keep it simple. Good stuff is the usual suspects: Arial, Tahoma, Century, Gothic. Yeah, I mean, for PowerPoints, I prefer generally a sans serif, without the little flicks and the embellishments. Whereas the serif fonts have those little embellishments, Times New Roman, etc. It's okay, but it's better. It's better on a PowerPoint presentation, I find. Less is more. No weird effects. PowerPoint has all this lovely, zoom in, zoom out, noises, little characters. Get out of there. No, terrible. No zany transitions or flying text or strange animations. And please, I don't know what's wrong with Microsoft sometimes. Just it's like facepalm all day. They have this terrible clip art bank. Don't use any of that clip art, please. Avoid being cheesy and sexist or informal or questionable humor. This was from an actual student presentation. The question was during a global warming presentation, hey guys, how do you define hot? Right? Okay, points for effort, but yeah, it's a little bit cheesy. You're reducing your credibility here, so don't be cheesy. Now, from time to time, you're going to want to use a YouTube clip, right? Because there's amazing visual material there. You should use it. And as a student, you are protected under certain copyright laws where you can use some of this in your presentations, professors as well. But it's awkward when you go to search for it. You have to Google it. You got to YouTube search it. No, have them ready. Have them preloaded on your browser and ready to go. And whether it's in class or on your own laptop, make sure you've looked at these clips, right? If you watch the first 10 seconds, you're like, oh, this is perfect. I'm going to use it in my presentation. But then by second 20, someone starts going crazy and like losing their mind. You're like, oh, what did I just show my class or my teacher? Preview the whole thing. Avoid low quality. Find good sources. Avoid using clips for your intro and conclusion. Don't start with a video or end with a video. You want to be introducing yourself first and concluding with yourself. Explain why you're showing these clips. Don't just hit play and expect people to decipher the context. You want them to have it set up, right? Set some context. And less is more. 30-second clips are great. Don't go too deep on this stuff. I think this is the last slide. Here's what I'm talking about, clip art, right? I don't know who designed this crap, but it's absolutely terrible. And it makes your presentation look amateurish. So don't do that. The end, right? Don't do this. Don't put a the end slide. Okay, that's a little bit of humor for me. Well, thanks for watching. So check out FOL for the due dates on your presentation. And yeah, I think that's it for today. Check YouTube for any other videos. Thanks, everybody. Have an amazing day. See you.